All right, looks like we're going straight into the first game, and Orange is going to queue up that even lock, and Thijs is going to start out with his Malagos Druid. Now, the difference between the Malagos Druids for both these players is that Thijs is running this Dream Petal Florist, which makes the matchup significantly better against things like Quest Rogue. But I don't know if that card will be particularly good in this matchup. What do you think, Jace?
I think it's one of the cases where the Dream Petal Florist allows you to sometimes do these crazy combinations where you really shouldn't be allowed to. Whereas most players, they either opt to put in that Tyrantus or they opt to put in the Lich King as the follow-up option. I think in this matchup, it could be extremely useful. Extremely useful to make that 2-mana Malagos. If it does land, as it will allow combinations for double swipe Moonfires, whereas typically you may not be allowed to do that. In a matchup where Orange is going to be life-tapping himself essentially to death, it will be extremely beneficial to sometimes have that lower-cost Malagos, because there is a range where Orange will try to play around, but with the Dream Petal Florist, it kind of boosts that range a bit.
Yeah, I would definitely give the Malagos Druid the favor in this matchup, simply because even Lock traditionally is most concerned with getting their health down to around 15 to 18 and have the Hook Reaver active as quick as possible. And they're able to use that swing of a 4-mana 7/7 to win matches against other decks, even though they're so far behind on health. But they don't have the liberty to tap that low against Malagos Druid, because naturally, Malagos Druid, even without the Twig activation, can deal 12 points of burst with just Malagos Moonfire. Add that with the Dream Petal Florist and with the possibility of Floop as well, and the damage totals are really insane. So Thijs, they're pretty happy to not see a Mountain Giant come down on this turn, although he did have a Naturalize to deal with it just in case.
Yeah, I would definitely like to play from Orange to just go ahead and coin out that 4-drop. Baits some kind of removal if Thijs feels that threatened by it. Looks like he does. He wants to go ahead and use the Naturalize. This is good for Orange. Could potentially draw out one of his Giants, and if he does find one of those Giants, he can just go ahead and slam that on the board. Does find another Twilight Drake for the follow-up. I think Thijs is fine with doing this because Thijs does have access to those Spellstones that would be able to answer the majority of the threats that Orange can present. May have to utilize both, but I don't think he's that worried as long as he's, at a safe life total, and he's still at 44 health, so he can take a giant hit or two if it does come down.
Yeah, it's pretty fortunate for Thijs that both the Spellstones have been buffed right away, but I'm sure he'd rather have seen something like Nourishes in the opening hand. He does still have this Wild Growth, though, to keep ramping up. At some point, it looks like if Thijs doesn't draw into more card draw, his hand is looking very light. Moonfires and the Arcane Tyrants, which can't really be played until you get something expensive. And the Dream Petal Florist, you definitely don't want that discount to be landing on either of these either. And as for Orange, he did have to overdraw that Defile because of the Naturalize, but luckily picked up the Twilight Drake on time. And Thijs is actually going to give this tons of respect. Wow.
Yeah, this is a lot of respect given to the Twilight Drake. I almost feel like, Thijs could have taken a hit or two. Maybe Thijs feels as if Orange, if Orange had access to something like Giant, he most likely would have played that over the Twilight Drake. There's a lot of differing opinions on how this matchup should be handled if Geist is in the list. Some players feel as if you get the Twilight Drake down to bait out the Naturalize because some people will not use the Naturalize on it. And others feel like, you have the Giant in your hand for a reason. It is the most pressure. You want to force them to have that Naturalize, or else, it's just going to keep hitting them for 8. So it may have just been that Thijs was the kind of player that wanted to get both of those 1-mana cards out of his hand while he could, before potentially Skulking Geist was an option for Orange.
Yeah. Given that play from Thijs, it looks like he might just drop the Tempo Arcane Tyrant in the next 2 turns. If he doesn't get Nourish or Branching Paths or a UI in the next 3 turns, I feel like Orange will have a lot of liberty to develop onto the board. It is quite awkward for him, though, that you don't want to be using the Shroom Brewers because it makes your Hooked Reavers farther away from activation. But what else can he play here? Just a Hooked Reaver.
Yeah, I definitely like the Hooked Reaver here. I think you have to get something onto the board with this hand. And Hooked Reaver makes the most sense. You really need the Shroom Brewers for after the fact, when your opponent has either Alexstrasza'd you or has tried to chip at your life total to a point where Thijs will be able to end the game with some kind of Malagos combo. And although you would love to have this be a 7-7 with taunt, I think with this current hand, you are forced to play it and have to play it.
Yeah, it might be that orange just continues curving out. He can play 2 and 4 in the next turn, although you don't really want to be playing the 2 drops here because they don't match up so well against Spreading Plague. Oh, that's an answer to Plague if it does come down.
Yeah, I think Thijs will be very careful to try and not use the Plague into a Mossy Har unless he is physically forced to. He's still at a pretty healthy life total, and he goes for the hero power phase. Sometimes in certain matchups as Druid, you would want to kind of hold that hero power back, but this is one of those matchups where you don't mind too much as long as you kind of have that burn to follow up, and Thijs has already seen one Hooked Reaver on the board, so he has no issue kind of reducing Orange's life total, even if it does get to that 15 range for potentially a second Hooked Reaver.
So from Orange's perspective, he doesn't have the liberty to tap this turn even after he plays a minion. So if he goes 2-drop plus 4-drop, I wonder if he's forced to actually use the Hooked Reaver, the second one, for just a 4/4 body, because the Shroom Brewers are really, really valuable after you've seen things like Alexstrasza, or if Thijs somehow manages to get minion pressure before the Malagos and puts Orange at around that 12 to 15 health range.
Very tough call. It's hard to say that you'd have to use both, and I like this play. I wanted to see a thought on this. It's just the fact that you really need to hold these Shroom Brewers, but right now Orange has access to 1 Shroom Brewer and 1 Spellstone, so I think he can liberally use the other one, especially since the Spellstone is buffed up quite a bit. You really don't want to commit both Hooked Reavers, as you won't have the second one for that 7/7 punch.
Yeah. So with that heal onto deliberately something that doesn't give Orange's face health, Thijs, I think, should have a pretty solid read on the second Hooked Reaver being in hand. And I feel like this kind of play also says a lot of information about Orange's hand, because I don't think you'd want to expend the Shroom Brewer that way if you had some other 6-drop, for example, Black Skulking Geist or Dread Infernal. So I think Thijs might know that the threat density in Orange's hand is pretty low.
Yeah, especially because both Drake's already gone. The next highest pressure threat is going to be something like that Giant, or something that would cost 8 mana, for instance, Lich King or Bone Mare. And we see there Thijs holding onto the Wild Growth, because right now Thijs's hand is pretty lacking. If he does draw something like Ultimate Infestation, it is kind of a punish, but that's a 2 and 18 at this point, and he would much rather save that Wild Growth to be able to draw in the future turns. So I like the restraint from Thijs, not just slamming the Wild Growth there, making sure that he has it for the next, for the basically investment for future turns.
Yeah, it is very unlikely that UI would come off the top there. Anything else would be playable, so Thijs just saves the Wild Growth for a potential draw. And Orange has picked up that Skulking Geist here. I think it's looking like a decent play, just because you don't really want to be slamming anything else at this point. He can take a value trade onto the Mind Control tech and then heal it up with the Shroom Brewer. It's actually going for Hellfire. Wow.
Yeah, looking at this Hellfire, I do like it, as it does allow Orange to kind of keep somewhat of a board state and push some damage while also getting rid of Thijs's board state. Orange is in a fairly decent position as long as he makes sure to have basically board initiative. If he gives the board over to Thijs, that would have just been way too much damage that could have been racked up, and it would have forced the minions to trade in either way.
So Malfurion, the pickup for Thijs. It's funny how the Doomsayer works out, right? Like, before the Malfurion draw, it looked like Thijs wouldn't have played any minions anyway, but Thijs is just going to get the Malfurion down, and I think even though you're sacrificing the minions it provides, it makes sure that the hero power is now online. You can get the 3 damage to face, you can still have the mana to play hero power and Wild Growth in the next turn. It's just that the hero power does activate Hooked Reaver, but then again, Orange could tap himself to Reaver range anyway.
I think that Thijs is going to be very hesitant on using this hero power for attack. The reason I say that is because you are correct in that he'll be able to tap, but if he goes for the play now, what will happen is Orange will be able to... that was honestly
that is a perfect draw. Oh,
that was a perfect draw. So if it wasn't for that draw, typically what would happen is Orange would have to life tap himself to that range, and then afterwards play the Reaver with not much follow-up. But since he drew the Giant, that is the best follow-up he could have.
Yes, that is insane. The only, technically, maybe you can call it a 3-cost minion in the even lock deck. The best Orange could have done without having drawn that is just play a 2-drop, and the stats difference is insane now. Thijs, with this Alexstrasza pickup, it is completely useless in this situation as Orange is at 15 already. I don't think... Wow, I was just going to say, I don't think Thijs wants to play it just as a minion to contest. But the thing is, if he doesn't draw something good with this Wild Growth, then he might just be forced to drop the Dream Petal and discount the Alex, which is not too good either. He needs this UI soon.
It's a very hard decision here for Thijs, as the Wild Growth does get something closer to Ultimate Infestation. But the Alexstrasza directly contests these 2 minions on the board and effectively saves Thijs a bit of life. I don't think Thijs is necessarily going to need to have this Alexstrasza for the 15 damage. What he's going to need right now is to stop these minions from going face. And Orange doesn't have too strong a way right now to deal with this Alexstrasza. The best way to deal with it would be something like Dread Infernal fully upgraded Spellstone. But as we can see, Thijs fit the Alexstrasza down a turn before that was even possible.
Yeah, he is 1 mana short of going for the Dread Infernal and Spellstone. Orange could maybe tap into a Defile, which would make Spellstone Defile really strong. Alternatively, Orange could set up just Dread Infernal and Sun Fury and then just send everything else face because he's protected behind 3 taunts at that point.
Yeah, Orange is just thinking about how he wants to answer it. The Defile plus the Spellstone would be fairly strong. We have seen that Thijs did burn one of Orange's Defiles with that naturalized play earlier. So there is only one of Defile in the list. So currently the best answer Orange has to this minion is either trading or committing both Spellstones, which I don't think is something Orange quite wants to do. Ooh, and there's a Lich King drawn. He may just go for answering it with both Spellstones just because he doesn't have, a better play.
So this also puts Orange at a safe health total away from Malygos Double Moonfire. And I don't think he'll be too concerned about that at all, the liberal use of healing, because he did just see Alexstrasza. So now if Thijs wants to go for a big Malygos combo, he'll have to do it in kind of an honest way. And wow, the draw for Thijs has been absolutely awful. My goodness, Wrath and Moonfire, the cards off the top are some of the worst. And I think Thijs is just going to clear it. Oh, sorry, use that for draw, of course. And Twig of the World Tree. Can't even swing face here unless you want to take 7 damage.
Yeah, I don't really think he can afford to take 7 damage, although Thijs would love to get that weapon going. And for Orange here, he is just in the driver's seat. He has a strong board, and Naturalize already been used. Both Spellstones, there are not great ways to answer these minions outside of the second Naturalize. But if Thijs draws the second Naturalize, that means he's not drawing anything else impactful. And even Ultimate Infestation doesn't appear to be enough to stop this onslaught.
Yeah, even if he does get the UI, he might just have to commit a Moonfire as well just to not take the 7. And Orange just has threats for days. Even the Ooze to add insult to injury. Not that Thijs would have had the time to get the Twig completed, I suppose.
Thijs is going to need some kind of miracle draw here. That is
Way too late.
Start. It is a start, though. If he can find the Naturalize, he can find something else. Right now, that does not look like it.
Something like 3 or 4 dead turns in a row for Thijs. And that is really unfortunate, but this will just be the game. Sometimes you just have all your card draw in the bottom 10 of your deck. That is really sad.
That's one of the risks of playing Malygos Druid, is that you have so many awkward combinations of cards that you can draw, especially with something like the Dream Petal Florist. For instance, if Thijs were to be playing, Lich King, which is kind of, I would consider more standard than the Dream Petal Florist list, maybe he could have developed the Lich King and received something like a Doom Pact in order to clear the board. So it's really those minor tech decisions that in certain matchups that matter a lot. I don't believe Thijs was going for, trying to really bully the even Warlocks with his Malagos Druid. He really wanted to make sure that it was good against Questroke as he wasn't banning it. So I definitely think the Dream Petal Florist inside of the deck list is correct. It's just the fact that, sometimes, unfortunately, if it were something like a Lich King, that game could have been winnable.
Yeah, that is too bad. But now, Thijs, I think looking at the bigger picture, shouldn't be too upset about losing to the Even Lock in particular, because at some point it might have been able to get some wins against the Zoo from Thijs, for example. It is really this Quest Rogue that he's meant to bully, and he had the same lineup as RDU earlier on, and I think RDU did queue into a Quest Rogue lineup at some point in the tournament, but failed to complete the reverse sweep. So it's on to Thijs to kind of avenge his friend and get the Aston Martin in the process.
Yeah, Thijs' biggest issue is going to be getting his Malagos Druid through, although I think the Malagos Druid is very strong, and it is Druid. It does Druid things sometimes. A lot of the times, it can get swept. I believe that's what happened to RDU, if I'm not correctly, is that Druid got swept. Could be wrong on that one. But Druid, although it is very strong, it doesn't have some of the most favorable matchups, especially into Orange's lineup. I would say that Orange's Rogue is still slightly favored, if not 50-50, which is good enough for Orange right now. And then the Shutterwalk Shaman from Orange, that has a fairly decent matchup against the Druid as well.
So for the second game, it will be just the matchup that we were talking about, Malagos Druid versus Questrogue. And Thijs this time has the UI in hand. He has a Wild Growth, and he, of course, keeps it here, double Wild Growth. That is a pretty good hand here, one Nourish, and things could be looking like almost unlosable for Thijs, especially with a hand of double Phantom Knives for Orange.
That is true, but I wouldn't count Questrogue out just yet. Even with these opening hands, Questrogue is still one of the craziest, and that's
oh my goodness.
He wanted a hand.
Turn 5 UI by my count. Okay, turn 2 Wild Growth, turn 3 Coin Nourish and Wild Growth, turn 4. Oh, it's gonna be turn 4 UI.
That is pretty insane.
Druid does Druid things, exactly as we mentioned a while ago.
This is why you bring Druid right here. Is this hand?
Oh, wait. Yeah, that would have been still 1 mana short. That's my mistake here. So it will be a turn 5 UI. That's nothing to scoff at either.
Exactly, Thijs. There was no real reason to coin out the Nourish there. The only reason for Thijs to coin out the Nourish and play the Wild Growth that turn would be able to get the Arcane Tyrant down, and that's probably what Thijs was thinking a little bit. But I don't think Thijs with this hand necessarily needs to get that Arcane down ASAP. I think he'll be fine getting it down a turn later, especially seeing Orange had to just develop Phantom Knives.
Mm-hmm. So for Orange here, he does have 2 copies of Glacial Shard. That's not necessarily the minion you want to finish the quest with in this particular matchup. He'd really love some bouncers for the Novice Engineer. Wax Elemental is one of the most useless minions to finish quest on as well. So, and he needs Mimic Pod or Bouncer stat.
Yeah, he's gonna need something here. He does have, all of these smaller minions, but doesn't exactly have a way to complete the quest. Could Novice Engineer into something later on. And then we see Thijs just gonna go ahead and do what Druid does, ramp up a bit, has that coin Ultimate Infestation on the following turn.
So Thijs here, there is some merit, I suppose, for possibly holding on to the Arcane Tyrant. I remember Nairia mentioning something about, like, at some point against Quest Rogue, sometimes you don't even want to play any minions, so you don't give them a possible Sonya target. And I think that's the reasoning for holding on to the Arcane Tyrant here. When you're playing against a deck which can most likely just vanish things away or freeze things, and when you have a hand this good, sometimes you don't even need the minion pressure to get there.
Yeah, I do like this from Thijs, holding on to the Arcane Tyrant, really making sure that Sonya is not a possibility from Orange. He'll most likely play it next turn, as he will need to get cards out of his hand, but will also have that guaranteed 5/5 onto the board. So, he's putting a minion onto the board next turn, so it definitely makes sense to try and get that Arcane Tyrant down on the board as well.
It's kind of funny to me how in these two games we've seen the polar opposites of the Druid hand quality, the very worst into the very best, and second UI is available for Thijs. If this card draw, it won't even be enough. With Malygos already, things could be looking very dicey for Orange.
Yeah, you even see Thijs respect the possibility of the bouncers onto the already novice engineers if something like a Vanish were to come out next turn. And I really like that. It's a very subtle thing. 5 damage was used into a 1-1, but at the end of the day, it means that Orange potentially has less time to get his quest done as quickly as possible.
It might be that Orange is forced to Vanish on the following turn just to have some bounces in hand. He can go for Wax and then Vanish so that it would be 4 procs of the quest, and he would only need 1 more bouncer or Zola at the end of it. Mimic Pod's pretty welcome sight as well.
I think Orange can afford a Mimic Pod here. Doesn't necessarily have to utilize this advantage just yet. Is under a bit of pressure, but does have access to the Glacial Shards if he does want to just play out one and try and stall out for a little bit if he feels that threatened here.
The upside of the Vanish is that it will just burn away the Arcane Tyrant because Thijs' hand is at 9 cards. It will also force Thijs to overdraw the next card off the top. Sometimes when you feel this far behind, you need to go for those risks, which seem like unoptimal plays, but sometimes you just burn something crucial like a Malygos or Floop, or even 1 swipe out of the pool can be a huge deal. So Orange is actually just going to go for the Vanish here. I think he can safely play off both Wax Elemental as well. It's very unlikely that Thijs will be able to clear both.
Looks like Orange is prioritizing taking that draw for, trying to find the bouncers much quicker. And now that I kind of reflected on that turn, there was a bit of, there was 2 very different lines of play, either, holding onto the Vanish for a little bit or trying to get it down right then and there. And seeing what Orange did, I do like getting the Vanish down there. It is a bit of a risk to something like a tempoing out Malygos or anything like that. But, excuse me, sorry. I think the Mimic Pod's more useful later on, and I think if you can negate the damage now, it's much better.
Thijs is going to take the turn to develop Malfurion, and since he's clearing off the Novice Engineer, the Hero Power before DK is the right order to fit in that 1 extra armor. The very awkward thing about having the Ghoul vanished into your hand is for possible Dream Petal bad targets later on when he draws it. I'm not sure if Thijs will necessarily need it since he has Malygos Floop, but without Alexstrasza and any pieces of burn, he's very far from actually getting the combo done. And wow, Mimic Pod into Sonya.
See, that does seem crazy, but it does actually make Orange's hand a little awkward. I definitely think it's powerful, but I guess I can't complain. 2 Sonyas is really powerful.
As long as he holds on to them both, he can do quest completion over 2 turns, I think. So you can go Sonya deckhand there, and then the deckhand will replenish as 2 deckhands, and then you can suicide another, and that gives you another 2 deckhands. So I'm pretty sure in the next turn that would complete the quest. I'm not sure if he wants to expend both Sonya like that, though. But in this matchup, you don't really need Sonya for post-quest completion.
Yeah, that's why I was a little hesitant to say that Sonya was extremely strong, is just because you don't necessarily need it after the quest completion, and Orange is only 1 bouncer away from quest completion.
So for Thijs, it is very awkward for him to have to deal with both the Wax Elementals here. He doesn't have something like Swipe to remove everything neatly. He also burned that Starfall because of the Vanish from Orange. So he can technically remove both with the use of Spellstone and Hero Power and branching paths as well.
To be honest, if you're Orange here, I think as awkward as it is, I feel like you have to do that. Or if you're Thijs here, you have to do that. Because he's on 4 or 5 of that minion. If there is any bouncer left, that quest is done. And especially if the Mimic Pod was on something like a Zola, for instance. I do believe Zola would have gotten played over the turn that did happen. So I really like this Branching Palace play from Thijs. I don't actually believe he can actually answer both of them, as he's not able to attack with his face.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense as well, because if you expect Sonya other than other bouncers, then technically you can't suicide the Wax Elemental anyway, because it doesn't have attack. But now Orange has his choice of how he wants to do this. 1 Sonya plus a lot of deckhands, 2 Sonya plus deckhands, just to make it more awkward for Thijs to be able to remove things. Because when you have 2 Sonya on board, if you remove only 1 at a time, you're still going to get another Sonya.
Yeah, I think if you're Orange, that is a strong point. But I think if you're Orange here, you just want to get this quest done and completed, get it done with that deckhand. No reason to go, too crazy, as he wants to play it out next turn. So if he goes for something like double Sonya this turn, then it gets a bit to be awkward with how he completes the quest and plays it next turn.
Yeah,
also, having one back, having one held back as well is very important to just potentially having, stronger plays in the future.
You saw Orange there use both the deckhands to try and maximize the damage. Feel like the turn could possibly end with a Glacial Shard onto the Ghoul as well. So Thijs now knows that he is on a clock. He has Malagos and Fluke, but no swipes, no Moonfires, and the Alexstrasza has not been played either. And not to mention, he doesn't have a good way of removing Sonya unless he wants to use Naturalize on it. That seems really bad.
Yeah, I don't think you can afford to use Naturalize onto Sonya. I think Thijs right now, his last chance effort is to try and draw through to that burn.
Spellstone's a decent draw. Now he can clear Sonya. If he has been hand tracking, he will know that it's a Mimic Podded Sonya though, so the other one is in hand. He can keep cycling with Ferocious Howl.
I think with that draw 3, Thijs is going to want to Spellstone off that Sonya just to get it off the board, and then clear off the Wax Elemental. He knows the quest is done next turn, so clearing off the Wax Elemental would allow him to basically kill a 4/4. But Thijs right now is on the game plan of trying to draw through his entire deck in order to enable that Malagos combo. So I don't think he's worried about Orange having maybe 1 extra 4/4. So he'd rather draw and take that draw with the Ferocious Howl rather than committing a Hero Power that turn.
Makes sense. And Thijs was kind of hesitating between using Wrath or Spellstone. The Wrath is less mana efficient, so you kind of want to get rid of it there. But he was thinking if he maybe needed to save it for card draw later on the game. But I think he decided he might not have the time to use it that way. So this is quest completion for Orange. Even if Alexstrasza is the draw off the top for Thijs, Orange has this Vicious Scalehide plus Sonya to heal up. So I feel like Thijs might have to go on the game plan of trying to develop the full combo of if your Dream Petal lands on the Malagos, you can go swipe, swipe, Moonfire, Moonfire for exactly 30 damage on 10 mana. Don't know if he'll have the time to do the damage in pieces because Orange has a Scalehide to heal up.
Thijs right now has access to that Mind Control tech. Orange, I guess, had to play into it. Could have gone for a different play with the Sonya, but most likely wants to save that Sonya with the Vicious Scalehide in order to make sure that he can gain all of that life back if something like an Alexstrasza were to come down. Thijs right now does have access to Spreading Plague as well.
Yeah.
The one thing going for Thijs is that Orange does not have Phantom Knives anymore, so these Spreading Plague tokens will be extremely hard to answer.
Yeah. Plague, MC Tech, and Spellstone is looking pretty clean here. Even if you don't steal the taunt minion, you can still Spellstone it away and push that Ghoul for more face damage, unless Thijs would want to remove Chargers from the pool for Orange. I think that's also a decent line of play. The thing about the Spreading Plague is that it's very weak to Vanish. It clogs up your hand, and it could possibly overdraw Thijs something crucial like Alexstrasza or Dream Petal Florist. But this looks too good. Pass up.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Can even Spellstone down the Wax Elemental and push this 6 damage face. Thijs is in a pretty good spot, but Orange has that Vanish in hand, and looks like Thijs is even going to respect the other deckhand, making sure that, he has no real charger in his hand to try and push through that damage.
Yeah, in that case, even though the 4-2 is the worst statted minion, it's not the worst target. That would have been the Glacial Shard because it allows Thijs to remove both of the chargers from the pool. He sets up a very threatening board that Orange might feel the need to Vanish lest he gets second Branching Paths for attack.
Yeah, second Branching Paths for attack would be pretty absurd here. I think Orange is going to have to respect that card and commit the Vanish here. I believe only the Ghoul and 2 of the Scarabs will come back. So not the worst case scenario for Orange. The Scarabs being in the hand are actually kind of a detriment because with Dream Petal Florist in the list, it makes it very hard to get Florist down and be able to reduce Malygos.
Yeah, it is quite awkward and possibly the reason why Thijs hesitated on that Spreading Plague, but just couldn't turn it down. That is, however, both Vanish used, I think, so Thijs can play out the minions. Okay, so that was a non-crucial burn for Thijs there. I gotta say, there's quite a few cards that could have made a huge difference if they were burned. The second Swipe, second Moonfire, Dream Petal Florist, and Alexstrasza are all crucial, so it was like 50-50 for Thijs to not burn something good. So it looks like Thijs is gonna take the turn to just dump out the bad minions from hand.
Yeah, I think if you're Thijs here, you just want to kind of get rid of these minions out of the hand. It is still hard for Orange to quite answer these Scarabs, as he doesn't, have Fan Knives anymore. The Vanishes are gone. There's still a second Spreading Plague waiting in the midst. Although it's going to be an interesting game to see how it pans out. I think Thijs is going to need that combo pretty quickly, and Orange is going to need something like Valeera off the top. But Orange has, I would say, probably more impactful draws. I know Thijs does have the combo left, but if Orange hits something like a Valeera, that's almost game ending in a way if he can play this matchup to its maximum efficiency.
Yeah, after Valeera, that not only gives Orange a turn of immunity, but the 5 armor is actually really significant because most of the time he'll be behind a wall of taunts that way. So Thijs can never get additional damage than the natural combo to Orange's face. And again, when you have the Malygos and Dream Petal Florist combo, the max you can do in one turn is 30 damage. So if Orange just never takes damage from this point, gets Valeera, he can permanently be at 32. So I believe Orange will be very, very conservative with his use of the dagger to clear things. Twig way too late here, probably not going to get too much work done, but there's just not much better things that Thijs can do here.
Yeah, Thijs is a bit strapped on what he can do here. Really wants to save that swipe in order to be able to use it with the Malygos. Can't commit it too liberally. The one thing that's a big detriment for Thijs here is that he needs to draw the Dream Petal Florist before he draws the Alexstrasza, because that's pretty bad in and of itself if he draws it, because the Dream Petal Florist will have a reduced chance of
actually
hitting that Malygos. On top of it, he also has Floop in his hand, so Thijs is thinking about playing out this Floop in hopes of drawing the Dream Petal Florist before the Alexstrasza, that way he can reduce it, that way he doesn't hit the Floop either.
Yeah. Thijs is aware that if he can guarantee the Dream Petal onto the Malygos, he doesn't need Floop at all, unless Orange was to get above 30 health with Valeera at some point. But I think the game plan for Thijs would have been highly dictated by whether the Alex or the Dream Petal came first. If he drew Alex first, Thijs could go for this game plan where he sets Orange to 15 and then over 3 turns does something like Malygos and then Floop Swipe and Moonfires. which is enough to get there. However, this plan is weaker to things like Vicious Scale Height, so Thijs is going for the plan of all in on the Florist, and for his sake, I hope it is the next draw off the top.
Yeah, only has 6 cards left, could find that Alexstrasza. I mean, I guess there are some very cute plays where you can Alexstrasza your opponent and then naturalize your own Alexstrasza where they can't Vision Scale Hide.
That is very cool, yeah.
It's a very optimistic world that Thijs would be living in if he does have that fortunate opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, even if that does happen, at some point you're forced to play the Malagos. And if that happens, he still has a Scale Hide target. So Thijs knows Alexstrasza is not going to get the job done if there is any healing in Orange's hand. So he really needs Florist. He did save this next Plague, though, just to make sure it can stall a bigger board from Orange. And without the Fan of Knights, he will have some more time.
Okay, there's a Ferocious Howl can enable him to draw more. Is really going to be looking to try and get something here. Branching Paths.
I think it's a Plague turn. He could have gone for something like Branching Paths Armor with the hero power, but I feel like the Plague board is just not going to get much better. You better get it out of the hand. Where is this Florist?
It's hiding somewhere in there. It's definitely in there. We've seen it before, but it's definitely hiding.
I think as long as it's not the last card in the deck, it still works out similarly because Thijs still needs to draw second Swipe and second Moonfire for that whole combo to work. So the last cards in Thijs' deck are exactly Alex, Florist, Moonfire, and Swipe. So I think the ideal situation is Alexstrasza at the bottom for Thijs here. If he gets Florist the next turn, I think that's the best. And then over 2 turns, if he can still survive. And I think with the Branching Paths for Armor, he should be able to. He can put together the lethal, but it's very dependent on the order in which these cards are placed.
Thijs could opt to also use the Branching Paths just to guarantee that he does get the draws for his entire deck in the next couple of turns. That's and true. Hopefully try and fit in the Florist, and hopefully he is not dead. You saw Thijs not swing at the weapon there, just because he knows Glacial Shard's in the hand, so he knows that taking the 4 damage is pretty unnecessary. So he'd much rather save the life than try and attempt to get through this twig that's probably never happening.
Oh, and Florist is the draw off the top. That is exactly what Thijs needed. If the Alexstrasza came first, he would have to take another turn to play the Alex and guarantee that the Florist hits Malagos. But now things are really looking up for Thijs here. He just needs to survive the next 2 turns because he definitely needs to draw at least 2 more cards to have the full combo together. So the next turn, he can go for Branching Paths for 1 draw. If he gets both the Moonfire and Swipe off the natural draw and the 1 draw from Paths, that would be ideal because then he can also Armor with the second proc. Wow.
I think Thijs is actually thinking here whether he wants to use this Naturalize or not. I don't think he should Naturalize here. I think he wants to try and reduce the chance of Orange having that Valera because that's kind of what could stop Thijs here from potentially stealing this game away. I think he was just thinking long and hard whether there was any merit or if there's any way he could die if he doesn't, naturalize something here.
It is very true. Oh, it's my mistake. I think Thijs will always only need to draw 1 with the Branching Paths because of 3 cards only being left in the deck. So Orange needs to put together a lethal really quickly now. 39 damage for Thijs. That means Orange needs a lot of attacks with the 4 cost minions, like about 10 attacks to the face.
Yeah, Orange needs to set up a 2-turn somehow. It's not looking too good for him right now. And even feels obligated to heal up with this Scale Hide. You really can't blame him, but there's only 1 target on the board. Goes to 29. Doesn't push nearly as much damage as he would have hoped.
For all Orange knows, he's already dead this turn, right? Because if Thijs had the Swipe, Moonfire, Malagos. That is 30. Orange will be pleased to see it's not there yet for Thijs. So I think that most of the time, Thijs just has this game unless the next draw for Orange is Valeera, because Thijs this turn will definitely draw all the cards he needs for the full combo. He will be able to armor up for 6, putting him to 37. So 1 draw with the branching and 1 armor. And Orange is only presenting 24 onto the board here. With 1 space, he can make 28 damage, 29 with the dagger.
I think what Thijs is also trying to think about here is if there's any way he can potentially beat Valeera.
Yeah.
But I don't think there is quite that way, so he's just going to go ahead and make that play of drawing, gaining 6, and then gaining hero power for armor, just passing, waiting for the next turn, and that should be game over, but a 14% chance to draw Valeera.
And for, nope, that is a Zola there. There is nothing Orange could do from this point. And Thijs, with the exact 30 damage from hand, once he draws the last card in his deck, which is Moonfire, will be able to sneak in the win with Malagos Druid against Quest Rogue.
This is a very important game for Thijs as the Malagos
Druid like it was the hardest one.
Yeah, this definitely looked like the hardest one, and it's crazy to think of how strong Thijs's opener was and how close this game still was.
Wow, this is really satisfying to watch though. Just having the whole deck drawn and the perfect 5-card combo to get the job done. Very well played from Thijs. But not gonna lie, the Nourish double Wild Growth opening with UI doesn't hurt too much either. And it's crazy to think that even with that opening, the Quest Rogue got this close.
I mean, this goes to show you the matchup in a nutshell. I mean, even when Druid has that insane hand, sometimes Quest Rogue, they just get there in the end, especially when they have the Sonya plus the Charger. I think Orange got his quest done a bit late relative to what the deck can actually do. But Thijs, just capitalized on top of that and made sure, he played to his outs and had that really strong ending sequencing of turns.
Sometimes, I just gotta say that the new builds of Malagos Druid give it so many more outs. You include the Alexstrasza to maybe get a faster win condition against decks with no healing. You include Dream Petal Florist for decks that you need to one-shot to effectively kill. And then sometimes other builds include Lich King for a minion-based win condition, and the deck is really flexible and definitely showing why it's in the lineup for Thijs. So now he just has to win with his Odd Rogue and Zoo.
Yeah, there's so many different ways you can kind of build that list, and it's all with a core of about 26, 25 cards. It's those last 5 or 4 cards that you really can change around to affect how the matchups play out. For instance, we saw in the first one that if he had something like a Lich King, it would have been much better for him. But if he had Lich King in this matchup, I don't believe there was any way he could have gotten that win.
Yeah, there's no way if that Florist in hand had been Lich King. So now, as for Orange, he has to still get this win with the Quest Rogue and the Shutterwalk Shaman. And it might be that he wants to just queue up the Shutterwalk now just because the remaining matchups for the Quest Rogue don't look too great.
Yeah, the matchups for the Quest Rogue don't look like the best, but I definitely think the Quest Rogue matchup into Odd Rogue is much better than people give it credit for. I actually think that it might be closer to 55-45 for the Odd Rogue. I actually don't think it's as polarizing as some people may make it seem to be out, as the Quest Rogue, if piloted by a very proficient player, has a lot of outs and has a lot of counterplay.
So it is going to be the Shutterwalk for Orange, which I feel has a pretty decent matchup against Quest Rogue because Volcano can decimate almost any board state that they have. It is definitely a keep in the matchup, but what else does Orange want to keep? I don't think you have the time or the leisure to play out Manatide. It's all about whether you can survive those first few onslaughts of either Vicious Fledgling or a minion with Cold Blood, 1-drop with Cold Blood, or the Hedge Clan Thug. And then a lot of the time, the Shutterwalk can end up out-resourcing the Odd Rogue.
Yeah, that used to be the case where Shutterwalk Shaman was not quite favored, but slightly favored in this matchup because you would just effectively get rid of all of the Odd Rogue's resources. But Thijs is playing Myra's Unstable Element, one of the new cards from the Boomsday, that basically says no to that rule, that, you can kind of fatigue, or not necessarily fatigue, but get rid of all of Rogue's resources. With Myra's Unstable Element, it gives them that last chance out of when Orange, the Shutterwalk Shaman, actually runs out of resources. It can just get right back in the game and have a powerful swing turn.
Yeah, in matchups like this, Myra's is definitely kind of like a one-card win condition in and of itself. I would include Odd Warrior also, just because Quest Rogue, I keep saying Quest Rogue, Odd Rogue is so powerful in the early game, but it usually takes just one big board clear to cripple them for the rest of the game. With the addition of Myra's, they have another chance to refill. And the biggest weakness of Odd Rogue compared to other aggro decks is essentially patched up by that one card.
Orange has the removal that he needs in his hand, doesn't quite have too many proactive plays in the next coming of turn, just mostly reactive. I think, especially in these control decks, you can be reactive all you want, but you eventually need to make some kind of proactive play onto the board. That way, when your opponent finally commits that last board, when Thijs finally plays that last minion, and you don't have a reactive tool, you can lose the game right there.
So the Fledgling, quite an obvious play for Thijs, and he's hesitating about whether to kill the totem with his dagger or with the Dire Maul. I'd be a little surprised to see the Dire Maul trade in, actually, just because it's a bit weaker to Lightning Storm, and maybe in the future that one extra point of health can matter around Volcano. Thijs without the Hench Clan Thug in hand is not too concerned about saving the dagger charges, I think. So makes sense to do it that way.
Yeah, I think Thijs was trying to evaluate whether he would be able to read dagger next turn or not, and he kind of came to the conclusion that he could just go double one-drop dagger up if he needs to do so. So the dagger will most likely come out next turn. And if the dagger comes out, it makes sense to kind of save that life on the Dire Maul for the reasons you said. It's much stronger against Storm, and it's much stronger against Volcano if the board state does get to that size above 15.
Orange can take a gamble here with Lightning Storm. 1 out of 4 times it clears both minions. And he actually instead goes for the safer play here because guaranteed, no matter what Thijs puts down, Coin Volcano on the next turn will be able to clear everything. And Orange can just also Earth Shock the Vicious Fledgling so it doesn't get Wind Fury on the next turn. It essentially is like 1 mana, maybe heal yourself for 3. Myra's enters the hand for Thijs, the card that we talked so much about. And given that Orange will be able to clear the first set of minions from Thijs, I think Thijs will absolutely need the Myras.
Yeah, he's going to need the Myras in these next couple of turns. Thijs is trying to figure out whether he wants to respect this totem and how much he wants to commit to the board. He saw Orange keep 2 and has not played either yet, so he may have some kind of read that it is either Volcano or Storm. It looks like, Thijs wants to go with this, half measure around the Storm as he gets rid of the spell damage totem, commits minions onto the board that are, fairly reasonable against the Storm. And that 1 health on the Dire Maul could come to matter here if, Orange decides to go for the Storm over the Coin Volcano this turn.
Yeah, I really like the play from Thijs here. If he had played out the Tar Creeper, that would almost always signal Orange to go for the Volcano there because it can remove a high health target. Now the Volcano feels like it's not doing enough to merit being played this turn. And so Orange naturally thinks, okay, what about the Storm? And if the Storm were to low roll onto the Dire Maul, and it definitely won't kill the Argent Squire, that would still leave Thijs 2 minions on board for a potential Fungal Mancer double target if it comes off the top.
Yeah, I think that's what Orange is worried about here, which is why he's considering this turn very deeply. He can go for that Coin Volcano, but Volcano on this board does not feel that good. I think you definitely want to go for the Storm here. I don't think you can commit to the Volcano just yet.
Yeah, I would definitely hold it for something like a Hench Clan Thug. And fortunately for Orange, he does hit the 50-50 to kill the Dire Mole. Not that it would have mattered too much here because there's no Fungal Mancer, but Orange doesn't know that.
And Thijs has been utilizing his dagger extremely well. Has just been making sure to kind of fit those dagger swings in every single turn and getting that dagger up every single turn. It's a very subtle point, but a lot of the times it can matter a lot in matchups as you get that 2 damage over and over and over, kind of like a Hunter hero power that just can be weaved in every single turn. And at the end of the game, if Thijs finally gets that lethal damage, it's going to be because of his dagger management.
Yeah, in terms of mana for damage value, that's actually better than the upgraded odd hunter hero power, and that tells you a lot. And the fact that you can send it at minions really goes to show why Odd Rogue has been such a persistent deck in the past few metas. And now Thijs, you mentioned that thing about the weaving in the hero power can really come in handy, and I can't help but remember that one game from RDU where he was 2 turns in a row was 1 off lethal, and if he had maybe just fit in 1 dagger charge to the face at that point, he could have won the game. So Thijs is going to be very conscious about how he weaves in this damage.
Ooh, and the Blood Knight just a turn too late. It's still it's still an okay draw. I mean, 3 out of 3-3, especially after seeing 2 storms at this point. Sure, Thijs isn't too upset with that. Could have been a 1 drop, but definitely would have rather gotten that down sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it would have been so strong. You're essentially adding +8 health to the board. Well, I guess you remove 2 of the Divine Shields and makes it really resilient to Volcano. Of course, we see from Orange that he has 2 Hex in hand, but just the fact that if Thijs had played the Blood Knight for a huge minion there, it would remove a lot of what Orange is capable of doing in 1 turn by forcing him to Hex here. And now, no matter what Thijs puts on the board, Volcano is a big punish.
Wouldn't be surprised to see Thijs potentially commit to just playing out both the 3 drops. Could also, keep weaving in that dagger. May want to have some kind of enabler for that Bile Spine, but looks like Thijs wants to go for, just I was mentioning earlier, fitting in that dagger every turn, making sure that he constantly has it up. There's no real need for the Bile Spine next turn, so I can see where Thijs wants to, weave in this dagger.
Yeah. Thijs has been very conservative with the Tar Creeper, and I like it a lot because knowing that both Storm are gone, Volcano is the more likely AoE, and he doesn't want to just throw away the Tar Creeper into that. It's also just less pressure than the Blood Knight would be. And if you look at it, this is still just not a very threatening board that he has forced Orange to Volcano in. And because Thijs got rid of 2 cards last turn and probably going to get rid of another 2 this turn, this Myra's is going to be drawing something like 8 cards. Essentially has to be playing a little bit like an aggro paladin, make your divine favor better.
Yeah, the Myra's is going to be insane here, but this is what I was talking about earlier, where you can have all of the reactive tools you want. If you're not making proactive plays onto the board, then a lot of the times you will fall short. Orange does finally make some proactive turns because he does have either the Shard Zola Shard or access to the Chain Gang Shard. 2 different lines of play here. I think I like the Chain Gang Shard because it's going to be hard for Thijs to deal with both of these Chain Gangs as he can freeze that SI7 agent.
Yeah, I think it's much stronger onto the board than Shard Zola Shard. And also, the only way for Thijs to clear this Shard is to have the second SI, which is pretty unlikely, or use a Vile Spine on it, which feels awful. So that is just going to be the play for Orange. And Thijs, with the immediate pickup of Firefly, senses another turn to squeeze out more cards from the hand, make it possible for the Myra to draw the full 10 cards.
And right now, if you're Orange here, you have to be trying to find some way to live. That way you can... Hagatha would have been very strong. I think he's in an okay spot if it weren't for that Myra's. We obviously can see the Myra's, but in Orange's mind, he might be thinking that, he can finally get back into this game with the Healing Rain, potentially a Zola onto the Glacial Shard, freezing the Vile Spine, and then just playing out the Shutterwalk next turn in order to potentially get another Shutterwalk back in the hand while also freezing minions.
Yeah, Orange definitely still has a shot at this with the Healing Rain he can stall, but Thijs has done such a good job of putting together boards that were semi-threatening. Like they're threatening in the sense that if Orange leaves it up, Fungal Mancer is too scary. So Orange had to use as much as 3 big AoEs to get rid of the board from Thijs. And even with this just steady card draw from Thijs, he's still able to put on more and more pressure.
Yeah, I'm a little curious to Orange's player. I think I would have much rather seen the Healing Rain come out here, as your whole goal next turn is to play the Shutterwalk, as I don't think you're going to be able to commit to any other play, as it'll just be 2 mana inefficient. So if you have to commit to the Shutterwalk, it makes a lot of sense to get the Healing Rain down, as you may not be able to have enough life total to securely Shutterwalk and live for a turn.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Looking at it now, I think Orange, it's second Volcano or Hagatha bust for him now. Just playing the 1 Healing Rain is not going to do enough, and Thijs has the liberty to take some minion trades, or at least use a dagger to clear off some of these things to protect his board. And the pool of Myra's cards is pretty good. The only thing I think he could ask for more is like Leroy here. But he has Fungal Mancer and Cold Blood for burst. He has Deadly Poison. It's looking really strong for Thijs here.
It's actually a bit crazy. I think if Orange can survive for 1 more turn and get the Shutterwalk down, if he had Healing Rained on the previous turn, he might just be fine. I think maybe in his mind that he wanted to have the Life Drinker onto the board in order to, start gaining life through that way. Could have been one of the reasons. But if Shutterwalk comes down here, it could potentially... it's so hard to say. I keep going back and forth with what I want to say, because Shutterwalk does look very tempting here, and if you don't fit it in now, you do risk dying to some of these potentially very threatening plays. But it looks like Orange is going to take 1 more passive turn here, try and utilize the Hex, maybe get a Taunt Totem while trading, and potentially hope to Shutterwalk on the next turn.
Yeah, I think that is the game plan. Just stall 1 more time and maybe remove some of the minions on board so the freezes from the Shutterwalk could be more effective. If he keeps Thijs' board narrow, then the freezes could possibly buy him another turn. But we can see that so much refill is available for Thijs. Myra's putting in the work that it always does. Oh my gosh, so you can deal 12 with just the Fungal Mancer and the dagger, 16 with Cold Blood, 18 with Deadly Poison. Not quite there yet.
This is where I think having access to Leroy could make a huge difference, because if he has Leroy, he can end the game through that lethal burst that he won't be worried about the minions being frozen onto the board. But there are only 2 shards currently in the pool, so I think Thijs is feeling safe and fine. And I actually am not quite sure whether hero powering on the turn before was correct, as if you want any chance of winning this game, you either need to draw into one of the AoEs, like Volcano, or you need to play the Shutterwalk and potentially get the Shutterwalk back from Zola. So with hero powering, Thijs can just ignore it, and another Shutterwalk would never be able to come back into the hand.
That is very true. And Thijs has set up a board that's resilient to Volcano anyway, resilient to Hagatha. He's made it so that there's pretty much nothing Orange could have done here outside of maybe like Volcano into Chain Gang, and if the Volcano clears all the small minions, maybe he survives. But yeah, even if the Glacial Shards hit the 2 strongest minions, I don't think this is enough to survive. And that will mean Thijs is going to go up 2 games to 1 and only needs to win with Zoo now. And Orange still has Quest Rogue.
Yeah, Orange still has that Quest Rogue. That's going to be pretty difficult, especially when the Zoo Warlock is the last deck left for Thijs. And we see there how powerful Myra's Unstable Element has been to, the overall game plan of Odd Rogue. If it weren't for that card being introduced into the game, it would have been that scenario where Thijs and Orange were both running out of cards. But since Orange had access to playing Shutterwalk and just kind of making a board state while freezing the minions onto the board, it would have been game ending there. But thanks to Myra's, Thijs had enough gas to get them there in the end.
Yeah, I gotta say, as a caster, sometimes we spend so much time talking about particular cards that never even show up in a game at the start of the game. But it seems like it was kind of lucky for us that we talked so much about Myra's, because it did end up playing such a crucial role in that game, and no less in the entire series now that Thijs only needs to win with Zoo.
Which, he's got two favorable matchups for him, and this is looking very good for Thijs. The Zoo Warlock is notoriously favored against Quest Rogue, but also has a pretty strong matchup against Shutterwalk Shaman as well. The new tools that Shutterwalk Shaman has in order to deal with Zoo, it's only in one card, and it's Electra Storm Surge. That's really the only card that can kind of maybe give Orange a leg up in the series, as he will need to kind of assemble that with the Lightning Storm in order to get some kind of board pressure going while clearing up Thijs' board.
Yeah, I gotta say, it might play out very similarly to how the Odd Rogue game played out. Zoo can very often set up boards that don't look that threatening and require an AoE though, because you need to play around Fungalmancer. And because Zoo has this consistent refill in the form of the life tap, it kind of is the same as Myra's, but over several turns, that it just can keep putting out threats turn after turn and make the Shutterwalk Shaman have answers. Eventually they won't though.
Oh, this is looking like a pretty good start from both of these players. Orange does have access to that Shard Zola, and Thijs having double one drop. I'm a little curious to think, he probably should have considered keeping that Fungalmancer as well. I think Fungalmancer is a very important card in this matchup, but it looks like Thijs is trying to go for, just a much more aggressive approach, trying to end this game as quickly as possible.
Previously, I would have been in favor of keeping Fungalmancer on coin in almost every matchup, but with the inclusion of Soul Infusion, when you see the Fungalmancer positioned in the leftmost spot in your hand, I feel a little bit more inclined to tossing it, because most of the time you won't have the time to play it down before you Soul Infusion something else.
That is fair. Sometimes I do subconsciously keep the doubling imp on the left side of my hand just to kind of hope I hit that Soul Infusion. It's very optimistic, but every now and then it'll happen.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth considering. And Orange, happy that he has an answer for the Flame Imp, but he'll be very sad to see Voidwalker come down for Thijs. Orange, the game plan is to survive until you get to the... Oh, there's a piece of AoE, one very crucial one, I might add. As the Shutterwalk Shaman, you're very sad to see Healing Rains in the opening hand. You definitely want the AoEs, and then you top deck the Healing Rains, stabilize afterward.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a close series, as Thijs does have that constant pressure. And Orange is finding those AoEs, finding that stall for quite a little bit. Thijs is going to be very conscious to play around Mind Control tech. Wouldn't be surprised to see him potentially take some trades and then push some damage face. I would like to see most of the damage go face. The only issue is Mind Control tech, so I think the 2-1 will need to go into the Zola as to not, kind of get, I guess, wrecked by that card.
So Thijs is just going to take also the value trade onto the Glacial Shard to probably prevent any shenanigans with, protecting it behind Saronite Chain Gang. So best Orange can do is just Life Drinker here, and it's fine because he's drawn the Shutterwalk, just needs to survive to get until there. And this is definitely a matchup where you don't need the full combo. A lot of the times, the Shutterwalk swing in board state is enough to get you the whole game, even though you don't have infinite Life Drinkers. So Thijs now, it's very awkward for him because he really wants to be pushing this Flame Imp damage to the face, but if he doesn't trade something and plays another minion, then Mind Control attack is a big punish. So
It actually
because of
looks
that,
as
he
if...
will, yeah. Yeah,
I was
because of
just
that
gonna...
possible mind control tech, he was just gonna play around that. Sorry. It's very hard to tell when somebody's gonna talk when you don't see each other's faces.
No, it's fine. It's a little funny. All I was gonna say is, yeah, mind control tech is something that Thijs is gonna be weighing on the back of his mind for basically the entire game. It does make it a little awkward, as it's this balancing act of playing around Volcano while not playing into mind control tech. As if you commit multiple minions, you're into the mind control tech, but if you don't commit multiple minions, then Volcano just becomes very strong.
So the Volcano looks solid here, but Orange is going to go for a cute play, I think, of freezing the Dreadlord and playing down the Acolyte, which forces a trade onto the Acolyte if Thijs doesn't want to have the Dreadlord proc and give Orange an additional draw. I quite like it, especially since by freezing the Dreadlord, you're making it so that Thijs only has 4 attack onto the board after he puts down 1 more minion, and you still have 2 minions to trade. I think that Volcano could still be effective there. Oh, and he's even freezing the Flame Imp. So if Thijs doesn't want to get the Dreadlord proc onto the Acolyte, then you need to trade even more damage into the Acolyte. And also, freezing the middle minion makes Fungal Mancer a lot worse.
Yeah, that was a really good freeze from Orange, recognizing both of those 2 strong talking points that you were mentioning, being able to play around Fungal Mancer while also forcing this 4 damage to go into the Acolyte of Pain, and also setting up the Volcano next turn. This was just a good play from Orange.
Yeah, very, very clean. A lot of nuances that people might not recognize immediately, but Orange is, of course, a very seasoned player. I expect nothing less from these 2 guys. 8, 10. Oh, this is more than Volcano can handle.
And
It's
Volcano
2
can
points.
handle quite a lot, but I guess this is just slightly more than, Volcano can handle.
Orange still has to go for it, though. Most of the time, the Tar Creeper and the Dreadlord survive this. Unless some shenanigans happen. Oh, okay, so that is a slightly worse outcome for Thijs, but I could not possibly do the math quick enough to figure out what's the more likely outcome there.
I'm a little disappointed, Gia. I was expecting, to have a full diagnostic on, the potential different outcomes of all of the Volcano math.
Yeah, I'll be prepared next time. I'll have a full spreadsheet with different tabs for all the possibilities of how many minions on board and how much health they have. Be ready, Dr. J.
Yeah, I think...
The refill for Thijs is quite decent. Because he can heal the Dreadlord, it's better around Lightning Storm.
Yeah, I think I'd much rather have multiple minions live there, as it would have made potentially a Fungal Mancer draw better. But I can see where having that 1 minion left gave Thijs the option to play around Mind Control tech. But I think at this stage of the game, Thijs can't afford to play around Mind Control tech, that he needs to keep drawing through his deck, and he needs to just keep playing out his hand each turn after turn and just hope that it's not there.
Right. So Thijs, pretty sad to see the second Volcano. Of course, it blows up his solid refill, and now he's forced to probably tap every turn to be able to keep up with what Orange has to offer. And Orange has the Shudderwalk ready and waiting. Wow, he can even fit the Mind Control into the pool, which is going to maybe hit something with the Shudderwalk proc, because Thijs is looking like he's going to want the Saronite coming up next.
And Orange has a strong play in this Electrostorm Surge, plus the Farsight will be able to draw just, a bunch of cheap cards. And it's going to keep this game going for quite a bit. That is the refill he needed. Although Earthshock, not the draw he was looking for. And Sandbinder's all right. Sandbinder does give him access to either the second Shard or Grumble, both very powerful cards currently with how the hands are panning out.
Yeah, there's not too many minions in Zoo that you want to silence, so Orange could be thinking about just using it to remove 2 damage from the board, but I expect him to hold onto it because he has this Mind Control tech.
I don't know, though, because you're playing with a little bit of fire there. If you don't remove this now, Fungal Mancer is a potential punish. I think Orange wants to take as little damage as possible.
Wow, that would have been kind of a punish. But I'm not actually sure if you go for Fungal there over just playing down 2 4/5s after seeing Volcano. It's really, really strong here. This board looks like the Warlock Omega card. I don't know what it's called, but
oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, Gia. I actually don't know what it's called either, because I believe it's only in the deck recipes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I'm told it's good in Arena, but the legends and myths of Arena are unknown to me, a filthy standard player only. For Orange, though, because he's used double Volcano, this is a very awkward board to deal with. The pool for Shudderwalk is not much that actually deals with the board. Grumble looking very strong here. Wow. So that actually is going to be a full combo next turn if the Shudderwalk doesn't whiff.
And even if it whiffs, it's very hard for Thijs to actually answer this Grumble that's currently on the board. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is just, Orange's game, as he's going to have 3 Glacial Shards in the pool. Serenite, I believe. Has he actually played Serenite quite yet?
Yeah, actually, no, I don't think so.
I don't think he's played Serenite either, yes.
Yeah. But it still would probably be enough to just have Shudderwalk freeze all these minions, protect his Grumble, and then Orange can win from just grinding it out with the board state. It's possible. There's the possibility that Orange saves the Shudderwalk for after the mind control tech, though. Even if all that fails, he has a really cheap Electra plus Healing Rain to get him out of a very low health total for such an efficient cost.
Thijs is even thinking about respecting this Grumble. That's how you saw him hover over the Serenite into the Grumble. He's thinking about respecting it that much. This is 6 damage. The scariest part is I think you have to, but you definitely feel so, just bad doing this, and you definitely don't want to, but I think you have to.
Yeah. I do think so as well. Thijs disagrees, though. I would be more inclined to go face if he had the one of Doomguard in his hand, or perhaps a Soulfire, but he hasn't drawn into any of those. But because of Solarium, it's likely that at least one of those cards enters the hand next turn.
So I think the reason Thijs didn't go for the trade here is because he recognized that the Grumble is not going to be able to take a value trade before Shudderwalk will come down, and if he goes wide onto the board, it does a very similar thing. So it looks as if he doesn't respect the Shudderwalk, as he feels... Yeah, that was a really good MC tech. As he feels as if Shudderwalk is currently in the hand and that has to get played, it's much better for him to push this damage and hope there's whiffs on the Glacial Shard. So I think that's what Thijs was going for here when he decided not to take that trade.
Oh man, I think that one MC Tech proc just completely turns the game around on its head. Orange also has the capability to hex away one of these minions. Yeah, because of the taunt, unfortunately, you have to hex away the thing that has less stats. But I don't think you can be complaining about this at all. This removes so much pressure from Thijs' board, and he's healed up to 23. I don't see a way that Thijs can come back from this. I think it's going to go to a Game 5 to decide our first finalist, Dr. J.
Definitely could. Trying to see what else Thijs has here as well. Does draw into that Doomguard, could potentially just play out minions inside of the hand, get some trades going. That Grumble will need to die this turn, no matter what. So it just depends on how Thijs wants to go for this here. And the Shudderwalk has not played Serenite yet, although, there was a Serenite on the board. Has not played Serenite yet, so actually it's not that strong.
Even if the Hagatha weren't drawn, he has played Mind Control Tech, though, so as long as the MC Tech goes into the Hex card, then you're bound to take at least something decent. With Hagatha, though, that removes any flicker of hope for Thijs here.
He even played 2 minions in the follow-up just to get 2 spells inside of his hand.
Yeah. That's pretty disgusting. And Thijs, the heartbreaking thing is that he doesn't even know the is in hand already for Orange. So Thijs could be thinking that there's still a way to get this done if the Shutterwalk is near the bottom of the deck, which is a fair assumption. But I'm pretty sure that Orange will just be showing this pretty soon. Maybe he delays one more turn since he drew another Life Drinker. Oh man, this is painful to watch.
Orange is going for the approach of trying to tilt Thijs by making the game drag out. We're just going to take this one to fatigue.
Oh man, I don't think he's necessarily deliberately.
No, I don't think so either. I think this is, most likely stronger, as he doesn't want to fall into some kind of trap. I just think it's funny that, the Shutterwalk is there and Thijs has this very slim sliver of hope that he might be able to get there, but we can see that there's no real way he can get there.
Yeah. I think it's very much just Orange trying to make sure he has the 100% win. I don't know if there was any outcome from the Shutterwalk there, even if it whiffs or it goes... I don't know. But there was that big mistake from Orange a couple days ago that he definitely does not want to be repeating on this stage, let alone this close to the final. So we are going to Game 5. I saw a guy in the audience wearing the Hearthstone Uniqlo shirt. Shout out to him. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, this is the matchup that Thijs was really expecting, though. I mean, that matchup was good for him, and it's very unfortunate that he lost that one. But Orange had the tools necessary to get him there in the end. But Orange still has Quest Rogue. Orange needs to get Quest Rogue through.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Zoo versus Quest Rogue is definitely not easy for the Quest Rogue, but it's still not as hard as Tempo Mage. A lot of the time, I would say it's difficult for the Quest Rogue because Zoo can refill post-Vanish very, very easily. It's like they can do things with Happy Ghoul that allow them to put as much as like 10 attack onto the board for like 6-7 mana. And Quest Rogue often relies on having one turn of breathing room post-Vanish and not dying. And then they complete the quest and then just use very mana-efficient healing in the form of Vicious Scalehide. But against Zoo in particular, I don't think they get the breathing room post-Vanish that easily.
One tech decision that Thijs does not have inside of his list that sometimes helps a lot in this matchup is Mossy Horror. Thijs is not running Mossy Horror. Cannot speak tonight. Is not running Mossy Horror, and also only has access to one Doom Guard. So a lot of that burst potential is going to be gone, just since he can't Mossy Horror away the Giggling Inventor and only has one Doom Guard in order to be able to constantly push damage.
Yeah, that is true. The burst from Thijs is a little bit limited. The deck list has been streamlined to be better against aggro, I would say. You have the double Dreadlords and the Tar Creeper, which don't get very much done. So that might shift the matchup like a couple of percentage points in Orange's favor. And he has Sonya Step. Oh my goodness. Oh no.
This is one of those hands that you want as Quest Rogue. We even see Orange full keep the entire hand. I don't blame him. This hand's insane right now.
This hand is really, really good. Even Glacial Shard against completing the quest on this is perfectly valid. Man, okay, at least thankfully for Thijs, he has the Void Walker to make sure that the Glacial Shard can't just straight up kill the Flame Imp. But as soon as Orange gets a charger with the Sonya Step, things are going to look very dicey for Thijs.
And you see Orange there go for the Glacial Shard over, just getting the quest down. A lot of times against aggressive matchups, you won't need to play the quest for potentially the first couple of turns. It was especially the case when Firefly was in the game, or not in the game, but in the current Quest Rogue lists, as you would rather contest the aggressive board than get the quest down and kind of delay the board states, as you really want to clean them up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Orange shouldn't be too worried about giving up the Glacial Shard without proccing the quest because he is more likely to finish the quest with Sonya plus some kind of charging minion. So definitely like the turn 1 Glacial from him there. Orange can use the turn to dagger up and kill one Voidwalker. The game plan is basically survive until you get Deckhand or Boar.
Yeah, but right now it's a pretty tall task to ask for, especially when, as you can see in the hand right now, it does have those very powerful turns, but has a couple awkward cards with it. I mean, the Valera, very powerful late game tool, but this early in the hand, it's not what you want.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate for Orange that he has to give up his one minion to get rid of one of the least threatening things, that Flame Imp that could really put in all the work that Thijs needs to win this game. But the next few draws are crucial as well. If he gets Soul Infusion, the Starry Night could be really, really scary because I assume Thijs will find the time to play out the Light Warden.
Oh, that's a very strong draw. I've heard Prince Kaliseth is a very powerful card.
That is a draw to match the Sonya step draw for sure. And Orange, is he going to get the time to even do that? I feel like the turn needs to be Mimic Pod. He needs to get something better to do. Next turn, he can go for the quest and then Sonya step, but he'll be taking at least 8 damage in the process.
Ooh,
okay, that is a deckhand. Oh my goodness.
This is definitely a good way to kind of close that out. It draws the Chain Gang.
Buff Chain Gang right after Kaliseth. What more can you ask for if you're Thijs? I assume that's coming down every day of the week here. Is there any reasoning for trying to fit in a tap or playing down the weaker Chain Gang? I just don't see it.
No, I think a 3/4 Chain Gang is a win condition on turn 4, and I think you go for your win condition here.
Yeah.
This is absolutely insane. I mean, Orange hasn't even played the quest yet, which makes his next turn a bit awkward, as he may just have to go quest, deckhand, Sonya step.
Yeah.
Unless he draws Vanish.
He'd have to use the coin to do that as well. It just doesn't look like Orange will have the time, even with this really powerful hand. So he can stall with the giggling, but there just hasn't been time to fit in the quest itself. That's crazy.
It is crazy. The biggest issue with the giggling is that Thijs has enough attacks on board in order to
just push through.
Which means that the giggling really doesn't do what it needs to do, and that's live for a turn just to be able to be played next turn again.
Thijs is threatening 15 on board, and if Orange doesn't commit some deckhands, he can't even remove everything. And if he wants to commit Sonya deckhand, then he also needs to play quest if he wants to even get the quest done at some point. And Sonya deckhand only deals... Oh, Sonya deckhand only deals 3. Can't even remove one Chain Gang unless he commits the dagger as well. I think this is very close to lights out for Orange.
If I remember correctly, Thijs also has copies of Blood Knight inside of his zoo. I mean, no, he doesn't. I believe it was someone else that had copies of Blood Knight. I apologize for that. But this is where, techs like Blood Knight and Mossy Heart come in a lot of handy. But it doesn't even matter right now because Thijs just has this insane board state. Can even, commit more onto the board just to make sure he constantly has those answers to this Giggling Inventor each turn. It's a little annoying for Thijs right now, but he's slowly but surely just getting there.
One thing I did want to see this turn is that the Kobold Librarian trades into the Noyotron. It creates board space for Thijs, so he can still play 1 minion this turn and can fit in the Fungal Mancer on the next turn, just in case some crazy shenanigans happen for Orange. So it's Vanish or Bust as far as I can see.
Even appears that Thijs just wants to...
enough mana. He doesn't have enough mana for Vanish.
No, he doesn't.
Either. So that's just the game. I mean, okay, Giggling Inventor, I just don't think it gets there with... Okay, so there's no rune to play the Fungal Enchanter. So giggling plus wax can maybe help you survive. In that case, orange will go for the quest.
Giggling may have to be
wax.
giggling double deckhand.
True. But how are you ever completing the quest that?
I mean, I think eventually you can complete the quest with the Valir. I think right now the name of the game is to live. Because if you go for giggling double deckhand, you clear off the 3/4 and potentially get a Fanonized target down. You could go for a half measure where you go giggling one deckhand wax elemental and then clear up one of the chain gangs. This is a very difficult turn, and I think now that I'm looking at it, this probably has to be the play.
So going for it this way tries to set up a Fan of Knives for sure. And Thijs needs to sink all of the attacks into these Divine Shield minions. He can use the Soulfire, but not going to be enough to push through. What he can do is use the Soulfire to get rid of the Giggling Inventor, but I don't think you need to do that because you haven't even seen the quest yet. Although it's better against some kind of bounces. You can still fit in the Fungalmancer that way. It's probably weaker to Vanish, though. Man, this is really tense.
I mean, it's kind of crazy how close this game is. It doesn't quite look close, but all it takes is orange to draw, one more card or just kind of get there in the end, and he still has a very valid chance of getting there.
If Thijs doesn't place this Fungalmancer to be resilient to Fan of Knives, it's actually very possible, but I expect that Thijs will buff up these 1 health minions.
I would imagine so as well. It just makes the most sense. And 10% to draw Vanish. I mean, is Vanish even enough? I mean, Vanish might just be enough.
Oh, he didn't play around Fan, but, well, it's still so much damage, right? It shouldn't matter most of the time.
My god.
Oh. Okay, so orange can survive another turn. The best play for Thijs to follow this up is to go all of the cheap minions, I think. He'll have 7 mana, so we can go Light Warden, Flame Imp, Voodoo Doctor, and Chain Gang. I think that's the way to put down the most minions on board. He can try to fit in the Keleseth so that every draw off the top will be doubly buffed.
I think at this point you have to go for as wide a board state as possible. But we can see that there's Sonya Deckhand. Even if he can't play the quest, he can at least play out as many deckhands as possible and just hope to try and get there by clearing the board turn after turn.
So let's see. If you're completing the quest with... Okay, let's say you spend 1 mana to do the quest. That means you still have 6 mana remaining, so you can deal 4 damage with the Sonya and 3 deckhands. I think you can fit in the quest here. But Fan of Knives, well, yeah, the Fan, it's too expensive without a prep because then the Sonya doesn't even do anything on this turn.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the Sonya does for orange here. He can clean up one of the chain gangs, but after that, I don't quite see what he's going for. I'm trying to think if there's any draw from the Fanonize that could potentially help him. Maybe second Fanonize in order to clean up the majority of the board. I think that has to be the draw right here.
I think that's exactly what orange is hoping to get. Everything else simply doesn't cut it, but that's not it. So... Okay, I think I called it a little too soon, but now this is game, right? Because Thijs can go for Fungalmancer, or if minions survive, this Fungal Enchanter is going to buff up this Light Warden to such insane amounts of attack.
Yeah, and I mean, orange knows that there's a Fungalmancer in the hand. He's trying to find a way out of this game, but I believe that is just it. I don't think there's any way he gets out of this, even if he just... Yeah! Orange is going to go ahead and give it up, and Thijs is going to make it to the finals.
That game was so tense towards the end. I thought Thijs was going to run away with it at the beginning, but Orange found some plays to help him survive. Giggling Inventor is insane, but this time just not quite insane enough. Thijs is our first finalist in EU versus CN 2018. What a game.
Very well played series from both these guys. They both played, to their outs, made sure that, they had the cards they needed in the right situations. But the aggro lineup was just too much for Orange to deal with. And Thijs, just with that prep from his teammates and that aggressive lineup that, I don't think Thijs is too much of an aggressive player, at least from my experience with him, but really paying off, the prep work that he put in. Because when he gets into a tournament and he preps as much as he can, he really puts those results in.